I had just walked in from a work trip when my daughter tugged at my sleeve and whispered that she wanted to stop taking the pills her father gave her. I didn't yell. I didn't panic. I asked her to bring me the bottle and drove straight to a doctor. One look at it, and his reaction told me this wasn't a mistake. What I did next changed everything. Before I take you back to how a life I trusted quietly unraveled into something terrifying, stay with this story. Support it, engage below, and share where you're listening from. What followed began with silence and ended with truth no one could bury. My name is Lena Moore. I was 38 years old when my understanding of safety shattered. I had dragged my suitcase through the front door of our home in Willow Creek, a quiet neighborhood just outside Northfield, exhausted from delayed flights and back-to-back meetings. The house greeted me with stillness. Not the peaceful kind, the wrong kind. The kind that presses against your ears. Normally, my daughter Arya would come running the moment she heard the lock click, breathless with stories about school, friends, teachers she loved and teachers she hated. That night there was nothing. No footsteps. No voice. No music from upstairs. I called her name once. Then again. I found her in her bedroom, lying flat on the bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly above her. Her skin looked dull, almost gray. Dark circles sat beneath her eyes like bruises. "Hey, baby," I said softly, sitting beside her. I touched her forehead. No fever. "I'm okay," she murmured, but her voice didn't match the words. I chalked it up to stress. Finals were coming up. Teenagers get tired. That's what I told myself. I kissed her hair, told her I'd check on her later, and went to unpack. 10 minutes passed. Then she appeared in the doorway of my bedroom. She stood there, twisting her fingers together, shoulders drawn inward, like she was bracing herself for something. This wasn't my confident, outspoken daughter. This was a child trying not to break. "Mom," she said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." She swallowed hard. "Can I stop taking the pills Dad gives me?" The blouse slipped from my hands and landed on the floor. "What pills?" I asked too quickly. She flinched. "The blue ones," she said. "He says they help me focus. For school. But after I take them, I feel weird. Sleepy. Dizzy. Sometimes I don't remember things. I take one, and then suddenly it's hours later. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember anything." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't like how they make me feel, Mom. Please." Every instinct in my body screamed. I worked in medical sales. I knew drugs. I knew side effects. And I knew no parent gives a child unprescribed pills without a reason they don't want questioned. I forced myself to stay calm. "Bring them to me," I said gently. "Right now." She returned with a small white bottle. No pharmacy label. No dosage instructions. Just a handwritten sticker that read "Focus Support." Inside were neat blue tablets, identical in size and shape. These were not vitamins. My hands shook as I closed the lid. "You're not taking these anymore," I said. "Not ever." I grabbed my keys and her jacket. "We're going out." Downstairs, my husband Evan sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "You're back already?" he asked casually. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said, gripping Arya's hand. "We're running out for school supplies." He barely looked up. We were out the door in seconds. I didn't drive to a store. I drove straight to a 24-hour urgent care clinic across town. At the front desk, I slammed the bottle down. "Someone has been giving my underage daughter these," I said. "I need a doctor now." 5 minutes later, a woman with sharp, alert eyes led us into a private room. "I'm Dr. Harris," she said, examining the pills. Her expression changed immediately. "These aren't supplements." My heart pounded. "What are they?" "I can't say without testing," she replied, already making a call. "But based on her symptoms and the formulation, these are sedatives. Strong ones." The room tilted. Sedatives. Given to my child. By her father. You did the right thing bringing her here, the doctor said quietly. Whatever's happening, you may have stopped something very serious. That night, I tucked Arya into bed and sat beside her until her breathing evened out. She clung to my hand like she was afraid I might disappear. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered. After she fell asleep, I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and slid down against the wall. I threw up. Then I cried without sound, my chest burning, my mind replaying every business trip, every night I wasn't home, every time I trusted the man I married to protect our child. Because deep down, before any test came back, before any doctor confirmed it, I already knew something unforgivable had been happening inside my house. And the person responsible was sleeping just a few rooms away. I barely slept that night. Every time Evan shifted beside me, my body went rigid. His breathing sounded louder than it ever had before, each inhale scraping against my nerves. I stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned, replaying Arya's words over and over again. I don't remember anything. By morning, I had already decided one thing. I wasn't confronting him. Not yet. Panic would tip my hand. Rage would put my daughter in danger. I needed facts. Proof. Control. At exactly 8:07 a.m., my phone rang. "Mrs. Moore," the voice said, calm but urgent. "This is Dr. Harris. You need to come in immediately. Alone. Do not bring your daughter." My stomach dropped. I told Evan I had a follow-up appointment related to some tests for my last work trip. He barely looked up from his laptop, muttering something about deadlines. The indifference made my skin crawl. I drove to the clinic, gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands cramped. Dr. Harris didn't make small talk. She shut the door to her office and sat across from me, eyes sharp, expression grave. "Those pills your husband gave your daughter," she said, "are not supplements. They're a combination of sedatives designed to cause extreme drowsiness, memory loss, and compliance." The words hit slowly, like a delayed explosion. "These substances are commonly used to incapacitate," she continued. "They should never be administered to a minor. Ever." I felt the room close in. Why would someone do that? I whispered. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was firm. "You already know the answer. And I need you to understand something very clearly. This is not a misunderstanding. This is deliberate." My lungs burned. "You need to contact the authorities," she said. "Today. Your daughter also needs a forensic examination." I nodded numbly, my mind screaming while my body stayed still. I called Nora, my closest friend since college, the second I stepped outside. She was a family law attorney, sharp and relentless. "Nora," I said, my voice breaking, "I need you right now." We met at her office within the hour. I told her everything. Every word Arya said, every pill, every symptom. Her face hardened. "That man is dangerous," she said quietly. "We're calling special victims now." By midday, I was sitting in a conference room across from Detective Alana Reyes, a woman with steel gray eyes and a voice that left no room for excuses. She listened without interrupting, taking notes, asking precise questions. "I know you want to confront him," she said when I finished, "but you cannot. If he suspects anything, he could destroy evidence or worse. What do I do?" I asked. "We document everything," she said. "We protect your daughter, and we build a case he can't escape." The forensic exam happened that afternoon. I waited in a sterile hallway, staring at a wall I couldn't focus on, counting tiles, counting breaths. When the doctor finally came out, her expression told me everything before she spoke. "There is evidence consistent with assault," she said gently. "We've collected samples and documented injuries." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I vomited into a trash can right there in the hallway. The world I knew was gone. My husband, my partner of 16 years, had not just betrayed me. He had violated our child. Detective Reyes laid out the next steps quickly. "Your daughter needs to be somewhere safe immediately," she said. "Away from him. Somewhere he can't access." My sister Clara lived 2 hours away in a small town where everyone knew everyone. I told Evan that Arya was going to stay with her for a week. College tours, bonding time a break. He smiled. That's great, he said. She deserves it. I nearly broke my teeth biting down to keep from reacting. I packed Arya's bag with shaking hands. Is this about the pills? She asked quietly. Yes, I said. And I promise you, I will make sure you're safe. She nodded. I trust you, Mom. I drove her to Clara's myself. The moment I saw my sister, I collapsed into her arms and told her everything. Her face went from shock to rage in seconds. I'll keep her safe, she said. I swear. On the drive back to my house, to him, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. That evening, while Evan was out at his weekly poker game, a specialist arrived. She installed hidden cameras throughout the house, one in Arya's bedroom, one in the hallway, one in the living room. Every feed connected directly to cloud storage and law enforcement. These will protect your daughter, the woman said softly, and they'll expose him. That night, lying beside Evan again, I felt like I was sleeping next to a stranger. No, worse, a predator wearing a familiar face. The next day, while he was running errands, I searched his home office. I found the journal, black leather, tucked behind old tax files. My hands trembled as I opened it. 8 months. 8 months of entries detailing everything. How he ordered the pills, tested them, timed his access, referred to his actions as sessions. He wrote about my work trips like opportunities. He wrote about my daughter like she was an object. I photographed every page. Then I found the laptop, encrypted files, search histories that made my stomach turn, forums, instructions, conversations. By the time I sat back on the floor, my body felt hollow. He wasn't impulsive. He was methodical, and he thought he was untouchable. I didn't sleep at all after finding the journal. Every word Evan had written burned into my brain. The casual way he described drugging our daughter, the cold pride in his handwriting, the way he referred to my work trips as windows, opportunities. By morning, my hands were steady, not because I was calm, but because something inside me had hardened. Detective Reyes arrived at my house just after sunrise, plain clothes, unmarked car. She read the journal in silence, page by page. When she finished, she closed it slowly. This, she said, tapping the cover, is a confession. I handed her the phone with the photos, the cloud backup, the laptop information. And the computer, she asked. I didn't open the encrypted files, I said, but they're there. She nodded. We'll have digital forensics on it today. Within hours, a specialist arrived, quiet, efficient, no emotion on his face. He removed the laptop and external drives like evidence from a crime scene, because that's exactly what they were. That afternoon, Detective Reyes called. You need to sit down, she said. I sat. There are videos, she continued. Photographs. Time-stamped. Everything matches the journal entries. My vision blurred. He also communicated with others, she added. Online groups. They advised him on dosage, on timing, on avoiding detection. This wasn't just abuse. This was calculated. He's facing multiple felony charges, she said. Decades. Decades didn't feel like enough. The next step was something I didn't want to hear, but I understood why it mattered. We can arrest him now, Detective Reyes said, or we can make the case unbreakable. What does that mean? I asked, even though I already sensed the answer. We document him attempting it again, she said, under controlled conditions, with officers ready to intervene the second he makes a move. Every instinct in my body screamed no. My daughter is never going near him again, I said. She won't be harmed, Reyes said firmly. I promise you. She will be protected at every second, but this ensures there's no defense argument, no denial, no escape. I called Clara and asked her to bring Arya back the next day. When I told Arya everything, the pills, the exams, the journal, she went quiet. Too quiet. Then she started shaking. I don't remember, she whispered. I just remember the dreams. I held her until her breathing slowed. They need to catch him, she said finally, so he can't do this to anyone else. She was braver than I ever wanted her to have to be. The plan was set. I told Evan I had an emergency overnight work trip. He sounded pleased, almost relieved. Don't worry, he said. I'll take care of everything. I packed a bag, kissed Arya goodbye like nothing was wrong, and drove not to the airport, but to a hotel 15 minutes away. Room 214. On my laptop screen, the camera feeds loaded one by one. I watched my daughter walk back into the house. I watched Evan greet her with a smile that made my skin crawl. I watched him cook dinner like a normal father. At 7:42 p.m., he called her into the kitchen. "Your mom reminded me about your focus pill," he said casually, handing her a glass of juice. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would shatter my ribs. Arya pretended to swallow the pill. She didn't. She went upstairs. 23 minutes passed. I counted every second. At 8:19, Evan turned off the TV and walked down the hallway. The camera in her room captured everything. Arya lay still, eyes closed. He stood over her, smiled, reached for the blanket. That's when the door exploded open. "Police! Don't move!" Officers flooded the room. Evan froze, then bolted. He didn't make it 3 steps before he was tackled to the floor. He screamed, claimed confusion, blamed me, blamed her. None of it mattered. Arya was escorted out immediately, wrapped in a blanket, shaking but unharmed. I was already driving back, running red lights, not caring who saw. When I reached the house, police cars lined the street. Neighbors stared. Arya was sitting in an ambulance. The moment she saw me, she broke down. "It's over," I told her, holding her tightly. "He can't hurt you anymore." Evan was shoved into the back of a patrol car, handcuffed, shouting my name. "You'll never prove it," he sneered. I leaned close enough for him to hear me. "You documented everything yourself." The car drove away, and I felt nothing at all. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. After the patrol cars pulled away and the ambulance doors closed, silence settled in. Thick, suffocating, final. The neighbors lingered on their lawns, whispering, watching, piecing together a story they didn't yet understand. I didn't look at them. I couldn't. My entire world had narrowed to the girl trembling in my arms. Arya didn't speak the entire ride back to Clara's house. She stared out the window, one hand clenched in the blanket the officer had wrapped around her. I kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other on her knee, grounding myself in the fact that she was here, breathing, safe. When we arrived, Clara didn't ask questions. She just opened the door and pulled us both inside. Arya went straight upstairs with the victim advocate who'd followed us home, while Clara guided me into the kitchen. Only then did my legs give out. I sank into a chair and sobbed the way I hadn't allowed myself to sob since the beginning. Loud, broken, unrestrained. Clara held my head against her shoulder while I cried for the years I thought I'd known, for the man I'd loved, for the child who had carried nightmares she didn't understand. By morning, the calls began. Detective Reyes first, then a prosecutor, then another detective assigned to digital crimes. Evan was being charged with multiple counts: assault of a minor, administering controlled substances to a child, exploitation. More charges were pending based on the forensic analysis. "They found distribution," Reyes said. "Online." I closed my eyes. "This is going to be federal," she continued. "He won't be walking free." Good. The next few days blurred together. Statements, paperwork, more doctors, a trauma counselor for Arya, a separate one for me. I answered questions until my voice went hoarse, replayed details until they felt carved into my bones. Arya barely left her room. Sometimes I'd sit on the floor outside her door, listening to her breathe, afraid that if I closed my eyes she'd disappear. When she finally let me in, she curled into my side like she had when she was little. I feel stupid, she whispered once, for not knowing. You were drugged, I said, holding her tighter. You were manipulated. None of this is on you. She nodded, but I knew healing wouldn't be that simple. 3 weeks later, the preliminary hearing took place. Arya didn't attend. She didn't need to see him. I sat in the courtroom with Nora on one side and Clara on the other. Evan was brought in wearing a jumpsuit, shackled, smaller than I remembered. He didn't look at me. Not once. The prosecutor laid everything out. The pills, the videos, the journal, the timestamps, the medical evidence. The room went silent when the audio played, his voice speaking to a child who couldn't respond. The judge called for a recess. When proceedings resumed, bail was denied. Extreme danger, the judge said flatly. Remanded to custody. I didn't feel relief. I felt exhausted. The divorce papers were filed that same week under emergency grounds. Protective orders were granted immediately. Evan's parental rights were suspended pending trial. Arya asked one night, "Does that mean he's not my dad anymore?" I thought carefully before answering. "It means he lost the right to ever call himself that," I said. She nodded and turned back to her sketchbook. We didn't stay in the house. I couldn't walk past her bedroom without seeing him standing in the doorway. Couldn't sleep in the bed knowing he'd lain beside me while planning what he would do after I left for work. I packed what we needed and left everything else behind. Clara made room for us without hesitation. Arya took the upstairs bedroom with a window overlooking the trees. She slept with the light on for weeks. I slept on a mattress outside her door. Therapy began in earnest. Twice a week for her. Once a week together. Once a week for me alone. Some sessions were quiet. Some ended with tears. Some with anger. All of them were necessary. The digital evidence kept expanding. More files. More conversations. More proof that this wasn't impulse. It was planning. The prosecutor approached Nora with an offer before trial. A plea. 35 years. No parole for 25. No contact for life. Arya wouldn't have to testify. I didn't hesitate. "Take it," I said. The day Evan pleaded guilty, I sat in the back of the courtroom, hands folded so tightly my knuckles ached. He stood and spoke about sickness, about needing help, about love. The judge cut him off. "You are not confused," she said. "You are not misunderstood. You chose this, and you documented it." The sentence was read. 35 years. The gavel fell, and that chapter closed, or so I thought. When the courtroom emptied and the guards led Evan away, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel relief. I felt hollow, like something had been cut out of me and left an echo behind. Arya never asked about him again. Not his sentence. Not his whereabouts. Not his fate. It was as if her mind had closed a door and sealed it shut. The legal process moved faster after the plea. The divorce was finalized in under 2 months. The marriage was erased on paper, reduced to legal language and court stamps, as if it had never existed. Custody was awarded solely to me. His parental rights were permanently terminated. The house, technically in his name, was ruled marital property and transferred to me along with the remaining accounts, all of it seized and redirected toward restitution. None of it felt like winning. Money couldn't undo nightmares. We didn't go back to that house. I couldn't bear the thought of Arya stepping inside again. Too many memories were embedded in the walls. Too much silence hiding too many lies. I sold it without looking back and used the proceeds to start over somewhere new. By winter, we moved into a small condo in a gated complex near Clara's town. 2 bedrooms, big windows, light everywhere, no shadows lingering in corners. Arya chose the upstairs room and painted one wall a soft blue, the color of open sky. We bought new furniture, new dishes, new bedding. Nothing carried over from before. A clean break. Healing, though, wasn't clean. Arya's therapist, Dr. Monroe, specialized in adolescent trauma. At first, Arya barely spoke. She sat curled into herself, sketching endlessly. Dark shapes, closed doors, faceless figures. Dr. Monroe never rushed her, never forced words. Slowly, drawings turned into stories. Stories into sentences. Sentences into truth. Some nights, Arya woke screaming. I'd sit on the edge of her bed, rubbing circles into her back, whispering that she was safe, that no one could hurt her now. Sometimes she believed me. Sometimes she didn't. I joined a support group for parents of abused children. We sat in a circle in a church basement, clutching coffee cups we rarely drank from. Different stories. Same pain. Same guilt. Same question none of us could answer. How did we not know? The answer, it turned out, was simple and cruel. Because predators hide best where trust lives. I took a leave of absence from work. My company didn't hesitate. They told me to take all the time I needed. I stopped traveling. Stopped chasing deadlines. Every morning, I made Arya breakfast and waited until she finished eating before doing anything else. Some days were good. We laughed at stupid movies, walked through the park, cooked together. Some days were not. On the bad days, Arya couldn't leave her room, couldn't tolerate loud noises, couldn't breathe when a man stood too close at the grocery store. I learned patience the hard way. In January, we adopted a dog. Her name was Luna, a golden retriever trained as a therapy animal. She was gentle, calm, and seemed to understand pain without words. Luna slept at the foot of Arya's bed every night. When nightmares came, Luna woke her before the panic fully took hold. The nightmares became less frequent. School was harder. Arya transferred to a small private school with an integrated counseling program. The first month was rough, panic attacks in bathrooms, hands shaking during exams, fear of male teachers even when they were kind. But she found one friend, Elise, who didn't push or pry, who sat beside her quietly and let trust build slowly. Art became Arya's language. She painted what she couldn't say: dark water, broken cages, figures climbing toward light. Her art teacher noticed the depth, encouraged her, entered one of her pieces into a student exhibition. Arya won. Her painting was titled Still Standing. At the award ceremony, she stood at the podium, voice shaking but strong. "This is about surviving something that tried to erase you," she said, "and learning that you're still here." I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Spring came. I returned to work part-time. No travel, a modified role, balance. Life didn't feel normal, but felt possible. And then, unexpectedly, something else entered our lives. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like hope tends to do. Hope didn't arrive with fireworks or certainty. It came in small, almost unnoticeable moments, like the first time Arya laughed without checking the room, or the night she fell asleep without the light on. It came in the form of ordinary days that didn't feel like survival. I returned to work 3 days a week, staying mostly remote. My role shifted, and for the first time in years, my life didn't revolve around airports and hotel rooms. Mornings were slower. Dinners were always together. One afternoon in early spring, I attended a mandatory wellness seminar my company hosted downtown. I almost skipped it. Crowded rooms still made my chest tighten, but I forced myself to go. During the break, I stood near the window, staring out at the street below, when a voice beside me said, "They always underestimate how bad the coffee is." I turned. He was tall, early 40s maybe, with kind eyes and a relaxed smile that didn't demand anything. No urgency, no intensity. "I wasn't brave enough to try it," I said. He chuckled. Wise. "Ethan," he said, offering his hand. "Lena." The handshake was brief, respectful. We talked for 10 minutes. About work, about the city, about nothing important at all. When the seminar resumed, he hesitated. "Would you like to grab coffee sometime?" he asked. No pressure. I almost said no. Instead, I said, "I have a daughter, and we've been through something difficult. I can't rush anything." He nodded immediately. Then we don't rush. Coffee turned into a once-a-week ritual. Public places. Short conversations. No expectations. He never pushed for details. Never asked why I flinched at certain sounds. Never tried to fill silence. After 3 months, I told Arya about him. "Only if you want to meet him," I said. She studied my face carefully. "Is he safe?" "I think so," I said honestly. "But you get to decide." We met at a crowded cafe. Neutral ground. Arya watched him closely, measuring his tone, his distance, his eyes. He treated her like an equal. Asked about her art, listened without interrupting. In the car afterward, she said, "He's different." Different mattered. Slowly, we spent time together. Farmers markets, open-air concerts, walks with Luna. Ethan had a teenage son, Caleb, who joined us occasionally. The kids bonded over music, sitting on opposite sides of the living room at first, then closer, then eventually playing together. One afternoon, 6 months after we met, I got a call at work. Arya was having a panic attack at school. I was 2 hours away. Without thinking, I called Ethan. He didn't hesitate. He picked her up, sat with her until she could breathe again, brought her home, and stayed until I arrived. No questions, no expectations. That night, after Arya went to sleep, Ethan stood in my kitchen, hands in his pockets. "I'm not here to replace anyone," he said quietly. "I just want to be someone she can feel safe around." That was the moment I knew. Not that I loved him, but that he was safe to let closer. Trust didn't happen all at once. It built itself quietly through consistency, through Ethan showing up when he said he would, through the way he never raised his voice, never invaded space, never treated affection like something he was owed. Arya noticed everything. She watched how he asked before hugging, how he knocked on doors, how he stepped back instead of leaning in, how he spoke to her with respect, not authority. Slowly, her shoulders stopped tightening when he entered a room. We became something like a family without naming it. Sunday breakfasts, movie nights, long walks with Luna. Caleb joined us on weekends, awkward at first, then comfortable. He was gentle with Arya in a way that surprised me, protective without being intrusive. They shared playlists, laughed over terrible movies, argued about music like normal teenagers. Normal. That word used to feel unreachable. A year after Evan's arrest, Arya stood on a stage at her school and spoke at an assembly on resilience. No details, no names, just truth. She talked about surviving fear, about learning to breathe again, about how strength doesn't always look loud. I watched from the back row, tears streaming, my hands shaking, not from fear this time, but pride. That night, she said, "I don't feel broken anymore, just healing." I realized then that healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about reclaiming space. 6 months later, Ethan asked to speak with Arya alone. He told her he loved her mother, that he wanted to build a life together, but only if she was comfortable. She hugged him. "He makes us feel safe," she said later. "That's all I care about." He proposed to me quietly, privately, with no spectacle, no crowd, just honest words. I said yes. We married at the courthouse with only the people who mattered. Arya walked me in. Luna sat at our feet. No past shadows followed us into that room. We moved into Ethan's house soon after. Big windows, open spaces, light everywhere. Arya chose her room carefully, made her own, filled it with color and art and life. Years passed. Arya grew stronger, more confident. She founded a peer support group at school, started advocating quietly for others who couldn't yet speak. She still went to therapy, still had hard days, but she was no longer defined by what had happened to her. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Return address, a correctional facility. I didn't open it. Neither did Arya. Some doors don't deserve reopening. On a quiet evening not long after, we sat together in the living room. Ethan and Caleb playing chess, Luna asleep at my feet, Arya working on college essays. She looked up and said, I'm writing about resilience. I smiled. You're the expert. I learned it from you, she said. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Time did something I never believed it could do. It didn't erase what happened. It didn't soften the truth. But it stretched the distance between then and now until the memories no longer sat on our chests like weight. They became scars, visible, real, but no longer bleeding. 2 years after Evan was sentenced, Arya turned 16. She didn't want a big party. She wanted control. That mattered to her more than balloons or crowds. So we planned something small, just family, just people she trusted. A long table in our backyard. String lights. Music she chose herself. Luna weaving between guests, tail wagging. When Arya blew out her candles, she didn't wish out loud. She just smiled. And for the first time since she was a child, it reached her eyes. Later that night, after everyone left, she sat beside me on the porch steps. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't asked you about the pills?" she asked quietly. I swallowed hard. "Every day," I said honestly. She nodded. "Me too. But I'm glad I did." "So am I." She leaned her head against my shoulder like she used to when she was little, and I realized something then. She wasn't clinging anymore. She was choosing closeness, not seeking safety. That was growth. High school became easier. Not easy, but manageable. She still had moments where panic crept in unexpectedly. Still froze when startled. Still checked locks more than once. But she also laughed. She also planned. She also dreamed. Art turned into her voice. Her paintings grew brighter, more complex. Less about cages, more about doors. Less about drowning, more about floating. Her teachers noticed. A local gallery invited her to participate in a student showcase. Arya hesitated at first. "What if people ask questions?" she said. "They don't get to know anything you don't want them to." I told her. She agreed to show her work under a pseudonym. Opening night, she stood beside her painting as people passed, unaware of the story behind it, just seeing the art, just seeing her. When a woman stopped and said, "This feels like survival," Arya smiled and replied, "It is." College applications came next. Arya wrote her essay about resilience, not as something heroic, but as something learned slowly, painfully, and imperfectly. She wrote about rebuilding trust, about choosing to keep going even when the world feels unsafe, about how strength can be quiet. She got accepted into her top choice. The night the email came, she screamed, jumped, cried, laughed all at once. Ethan pulled her into a hug she accepted without hesitation. "I did it," she said, breathless. "You sure did," he replied. That same year, the final appeal was denied. Evan would not be released early. He would not receive reduced time. He would not regain contact. The chapter closed fully. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I felt distance. Like something far away had finally stopped casting a shadow over our lives. He became irrelevant, a name without weight. I volunteered more, joined advocacy groups, helped other parents navigate systems I never wanted to understand but now knew intimately. I sat across from mothers whose faces mirrored mine from years earlier, shattered, angry, terrified. I told them the truth. That healing wasn't linear. That justice didn't feel like closure. That safety had to be rebuilt piece by piece, but also that it was possible. Ethan remained steady through everything. He never asked Arya to call him anything other than his name, never insisted on labels, never tried to replace what had been taken from her. He earned trust by respecting boundaries, not pushing past them. One night, after Arya went to bed, he said, "I know I'll never fully understand what you both went through, but I promise to always listen." And he did. Life didn't become perfect, but it became real. Years later, on a quiet Sunday evening, the house hummed with ordinary sounds. Caleb practicing guitar in his room, Ethan chopping vegetables for dinner, Luna asleep at my feet, Arya at the dining table, laptop open, drafting scholarship essays. I watched her for a long moment. She caught me staring. What? She asked, smiling. Nothing, I said. Just proud. She rolled her eyes affectionately. You're always proud. Because you're always brave. She shook her head. I'm just living. And that was everything. We had survived the unthinkable, faced betrayal in its ugliest form, lost a life we thought was safe. But we didn't stay broken. We rebuilt, slowly, carefully, on our own terms. And that quiet rebuilding, without shouting, without spectacle, was how we reclaimed everything that had been stolen from us. College changed Arya in ways I hadn't expected, not because it erased her past, but because it gave her distance from it. Physical distance, emotional space, a chance to define herself somewhere no one knew her history unless she chose to share it. The campus was 3 hours away, far enough to feel like a new world, close enough that I could reach her if she needed me. The first night after I dropped her off, I sat in the car outside the dorm for nearly 10 minutes before driving away. My chest felt tight, like I was leaving something unfinished behind. Ethan squeezed my hand. She's ready, he said softly. I know, I replied. I just don't know if I am. The first few weeks were hard. She called often, sometimes to talk, sometimes just to listen to my voice while she did homework. She struggled with sleep again. New place, new sounds, too many unfamiliar faces. But she didn't shut down. She reached out. That alone told me how far she'd come. By mid-semester, her voice on the phone sounded lighter. She talked about her art professors, about late-night study sessions, about a small group she'd joined for survivors of trauma, not because she needed saving, but because she wanted to support others. I don't tell my whole story, she said once, just enough to help someone else feel less alone. That scared me, and made me proud at the same time. Then, something unexpected happened. One evening, as Ethan and I were clearing the dinner table, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. I'm glad I didn't. Ms. Moore, a male voice asked. Yes. This is Officer Daniel Price with the Department of Corrections. I'm calling in reference to inmate Evan Moore. My stomach dropped. Ethan froze. What about him? I asked, forcing my voice steady. There's been an incident, the officer said. Nothing involving you or your daughter directly. But because you're listed as a protected party, we're required to notify you. I gripped the edge of the counter. What kind of incident? There was an internal investigation, he said carefully. We believe Mr. Moore attempted to communicate with another minor through an intermediary. The attempt failed, but it raises concerns. I closed my eyes. Even locked away, he was still trying. We've placed him under stricter monitoring, the officer continued. No external correspondence. No privileges. But we wanted you to be aware. After the call ended, the house felt colder. He doesn't stop, I whispered. No, Ethan said. But he also doesn't get to reach her. Ever. I didn't tell Arya. Not yet. I didn't want his shadow creeping into her new life. But the knowledge changed something inside me. It reminded me that healing doesn't mean danger disappears. It means you're stronger when it tries to resurface. A few weeks later, Arya came home for fall break. She looked older somehow, more grounded. She hugged me longer than usual. I missed this place, she said, glancing around the living room. That night, after dinner, she asked a question that caught me off guard. Do you think people like him ever actually change? She asked quietly. I considered my answer carefully. I think some people regret consequences, I said, but not all regret choices. She nodded slowly. I don't want to spend my life wondering about him. You don't have to, I said. Your life doesn't orbit his actions anymore. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. During that visit, I noticed something else. She was watching people more closely, assessing, not fearful, observant. It wasn't hypervigilance anymore. It was awareness. Before she left to return to campus, she handed me a sealed envelope. Don't open it yet, she said. Wait until I call you. I agreed. though curiosity burned in my chest. 3 weeks later, my phone rang. "Okay," she said. "You can open it now." Inside was a printed copy of an essay. Not for school. For something else. It was titled "Control is Not Love." She had written it for a national advocacy publication. Anonymous. No names. No identifying details. Just truth. Raw, clear, unflinching. She described manipulation. Silence. The way trust can be weaponized. The way survival often begins with a single question. I felt tears blur the words. "They want to publish it," she said, "but only if you're okay with it." I didn't answer immediately. I thought about the risks, the exposure, the weight. Then I thought about the girl who once stood in my doorway trembling, asking if she could stop taking pills. "I'm okay with it," I said. "If you are." "I am," she replied. "I don't want power over him. I want power over my own story." The article was published 2 months later. It quietly went viral. No headlines, no spectacle, just thousands of people sharing it, commenting, thanking the anonymous author for saying what they'd never had words for. Aria didn't read the comments. She didn't need validation. She'd already reclaimed something far more important. Her voice. But not everyone reacted the same way. One afternoon, an email landed in my inbox from Evan's parents. They had found the article. They accused Aria of exaggeration, of betrayal, of destroying the family's name. I deleted the email without responding. Some people choose denial over truth. That is not our burden to carry. Still, I could feel the story shifting again, not toward danger, but toward confrontation of a different kind. Public truth has consequences. And while Aria was stronger now, I knew the next phase of this journey would test us in ways we hadn't faced before. Not with fear, but with visibility. The attention didn't explode all at once. It crept in quietly, the way fog does, slow, persistent, impossible to ignore once it's settled. Aria's article didn't carry her name, but truth has a way of echoing in familiar places. Within weeks, messages began appearing in the advocacy group she volunteered with. Survivors recognized pieces of their own stories in the words. Professors referenced the article during lectures about power dynamics and consent. A campus counselor asked, carefully, whether she might be willing to help facilitate a support circle. She said yes, but only on her terms. "I don't want to be the face of anything," she told me over the phone. "I just want to help create space." That distinction mattered. It meant she was choosing presence, not exposure. Still, visibility has gravity. One afternoon, I received a call from an unfamiliar number with a local area code. "Ms. Moore," a woman asked. Her tone was professional, cautious. "My name is Rachel Lynn. I'm an investigative producer with a public interest media group. We're working on a piece about institutional failures in protecting minors. Your daughter's essay came to our attention." My chest tightened. "I'm not comfortable discussing my child," I said immediately. "I understand," she replied. "We wouldn't ask without consent. This isn't about details. It's about systemic patterns." But I wanted to reach out directly rather than speculate. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. When I told Aria, she listened quietly. "I don't want to be interviewed," she said. "Not now. Maybe not ever." "That's enough," I replied. No explanation required. But the conversation lingered between us, unspoken. That same week, another letter arrived from the correctional facility, not addressed to me, addressed to the court. It was a formal request for a sentence review, citing rehabilitation progress and good behavior. I felt something dark twist in my stomach. The prosecutor called 2 days later. "It's routine," she said. "It won't go anywhere. But I wanted you informed." Routine or not, it shook something loose. That night, I dreamed of the house again, the old one, the hallway, the closed door at the end. I woke with my heart racing and the taste of fear sharp on my tongue. The past doesn't vanish. It waits. Aria came home for winter break, carrying herself differently, still cautious but assured. She moved through the house like she belonged fully to the space, not like someone borrowing safety temporarily. One evening, while Ethan and Caleb were out picking up groceries, Arya sat across from me at the table, absently turning a mug in her hands. "I think I want to study psychology," she said. I looked up. "Really?" "Trauma-informed care," she continued. "Not just art, or maybe both. I want to understand how people break and how they rebuild." I swallowed hard. "You already understand that," I said gently. "From the inside," she replied. "I want the tools to help from the outside, too." That was the moment I realized something crucial. She wasn't living in reaction anymore. She was planning forward. During that break, she also made a decision I hadn't expected. She asked to see the journal. Not the whole thing. Just the last page, the one where Evan had written about control, ownership, entitlement. I hesitated. Then I said yes. We sat together on the couch. I held the journal. She read silently. When she finished, she closed it calmly. "He never saw me," she said. "Not really." "No," I agreed. "He didn't." "That's his failure," she continued. "Not mine." We burned the journal that night. Not out of rage. Not dramatically. Just quietly in a metal fire pit in the backyard under a cold sky. Page by page. Ash turning to nothing. When the last ember died, Arya said, "I don't need proof anymore." Spring semester brought new challenges. A student newspaper published an opinion piece referencing control is not love. Again, no names. But the tone shifted. The comments section filled with debate. Some supportive, some dismissive, a few openly hostile. Arya didn't read them, but someone else did. A classmate recognized fragments of the story. Not enough to accuse, but enough to question. Whispers followed. Curious glances. One night, Arya called me later than usual. "I'm okay," she said quickly. "I just wanted you to hear it from me first." Someone asked, "What did you say?" I said it wasn't their story to investigate. I exhaled slowly. "How did that feel?" "Empowering," she replied, "and exhausting." That duality followed her for weeks. Strength and fatigue. Growth and weight. I flew out to visit her mid-semester. We walked the campus together, sat on a bench under budding trees. She leaned against me the way she used to when she was younger, but this time it felt like choice, not need. "I don't regret writing it," she said, "but I'm learning when to step back." "That's wisdom," I told her, "not retreat." The sentence review request was denied in late April. No explanation needed. Finality doesn't always come with ceremony. That summer, Ethan and I took Arya and Caleb on a short trip to the coast. No itinerary, no expectations, just space. Arya swam, laughed, fell asleep on the beach with Luna's head on her lap. One evening, as the sun sank low, she said something that caught me off guard. "I don't think my story ends with survival," she said. "What do you think it ends with?" I asked. She considered the horizon. Agency. The word stayed with me long after the waves erased our footprints. By fall, Arya returned to campus with clarity. She stepped back from public-facing advocacy and focused on one-on-one mentoring. Quiet impact. Sustainable impact. She set boundaries, protected her peace, and then another shift. An email arrived from the media producer again. Not a request. An update. They had uncovered patterns connecting multiple cases across years. Shared behaviors. Shared methods. Shared institutional blind spots. One line stood out. "Your daughter's essay helped others speak." I forwarded it to Arya. She replied with a single sentence. Then it did what it needed to do. Still, I felt the ground subtly moving again. Truth, once released, doesn't stop at intention. It keeps traveling. And I knew, deep down, that the next chapter wouldn't be about healing alone. It would be about reckoning. The reckoning didn't arrive like a storm. It arrived like paperwork. Subpoenas, requests, quiet emails from people who had learned how to choose their words carefully. Everything moved through official channels, wrapped in neutral language that barely hinted at the weight underneath. The investigative group reached out again, not for interviews, not for statements, but to inform us. They had uncovered connections spanning years. Not just one case, not just one man. Patterns of behavior, online forums, overlapping usernames, institutions that had failed to report red flags, professionals who had looked away because paperwork was inconvenient and accusations were uncomfortable. Evan's name appeared in those documents, but not alone. He had been part of something larger. That knowledge sat heavy in my chest, because while justice had come for him, it hadn't come soon enough for others. And even now it wasn't guaranteed. Arya read everything she chose to read. She didn't ask me to filter it. She wanted facts, not protection. "I need to understand the scale," she said quietly one evening as we sat at the kitchen table, papers spread between us. Not to relive it, to contextualize it. I watched her carefully. She was calm, focused, grounded. This wasn't re-traumatization. This was agency. By then, she was home for the summer, working part-time at a community arts center and mentoring younger students. She spent mornings painting and afternoons listening, really listening, to kids who were trying to find language for things they didn't yet understand. One afternoon, she came home unusually quiet. "Something happened?" I asked. She nodded. "One of the girls told me something today. Not details, just enough." My stomach tightened. "She asked me what happens when adults don't believe you," Arya continued. And I didn't know how to answer without lying. I reached for her hand. "What did you say?" "That sometimes they don't believe you at first," she replied. "But that doesn't make you wrong. And that finding one person who listens can change everything." I saw then how the circle was widening, not just outward but inward. Arya wasn't defined by what had happened to her anymore. She was defined by what she did with it. The legal developments continued quietly. Evan's involvement in broader networks meant additional charges were considered, though the existing sentence already exceeded what most would ever serve. The prosecutor explained it gently during a phone call. "This isn't about adding time," she said. "It's about establishing record, accountability, making sure patterns are documented so they can't be denied later." I understood. History matters, even when it doesn't change the outcome. That fall, Arya returned to campus with a clearer sense of purpose. She declared a double major, fine arts and psychology, with a focus on trauma-informed care. Her schedule was heavy, but she handled it with intention, no longer pushing herself to exhaustion. Boundaries had become second nature. She checked in weekly, sometimes daily, not because she needed reassurance, but because connection had become choice, not necessity. Ethan and I adjusted too. Our relationship had weathered more than most ever face, even though the trauma wasn't his. He remained steady, unassuming, present. He never tried to insert himself into moments that weren't his to hold. He asked when to step forward, when to step back. That respect was everything. One evening, months later, we received an invitation. A closed-door roundtable. Advocates, survivors, legal experts, educators. The investigative group wanted to discuss systemic failures and survivor-informed reform. Attendance was optional, participation voluntary. Arya read the email twice. "I don't want to speak," she said immediately, "but I want to listen." We went together. The room was quiet, serious. No cameras, no press, just people who understood the gravity of what they were addressing. Stories overlapped in ways that made my chest ache. Different locations, different timelines, same patterns of dismissal, same missed warnings. At one point, a woman across the table said something that stuck with me. "Predators don't rely on secrecy," she said. "They rely on disbelief." Arya's jaw tightened. Afterward, in the car, she stared out the window for a long time. I used to think survival was the hardest part, she said finally. But it's not. What is? I asked, choosing what to do with the truth once you have it. The weeks that followed were quieter, not empty, intentional. Arya scaled back public involvement again, choosing depth over breadth. She began working with a faculty advisor on a long-term project, anonymized, research-based, centered on survivor autonomy rather than exposure. I don't want to turn pain into spectacle, she told me. I want to turn it into infrastructure. That sentence stayed with me. Infrastructure. Something that remains when attention fades. One evening, a call came from a number I didn't recognize. It was Evan's sister. I hadn't heard her voice in years. I don't expect forgiveness, she said quickly. I just wanted you to know we cut contact. Fully. We testified in the internal review. I'm sorry it took us this long. I thanked her politely and ended the call. Some apologies come too late to matter emotionally, but they still matter historically. I told Arya. She listened quietly. I don't feel anything about that, she said. Is that okay? Yes, I replied. That's called peace. As winter approached, Arya applied for a competitive fellowship tied to her research interests. The application required a personal statement, not about trauma, but about values. She let me read it after she submitted. It wasn't about what she survived. It was about consent, agency, and the ethics of listening. She was accepted. The night the email arrived, she didn't scream or cry. She smiled, closed her laptop, and said, "This feels like alignment." I thought back to the girl who once stood trembling in my doorway, asking if she could stop taking pills she didn't understand. The distance between then and now felt immeasurable, not because time had erased pain, but because she had reclaimed authorship of her life. And still, this wasn't the end. The systems she had brushed up against were still shifting, the investigations ongoing, the conversations evolving. Visibility came in waves, and with it, resistance. But Arya no longer feared waves. She knew how to anchor herself. One night, as we sat together on the porch, Luna asleep at our feet, she said something quietly. I don't think my story is something I leave behind. What do you think it is? I asked. I think it's something I carry, she replied, but it doesn't carry me anymore. I reached for her hand, and in that moment I knew, whatever came next, whatever chapter still waited unwritten, she would meet them standing, not as a survivor defined by harm, but as a woman who chose her own direction. And this story, our story, was still unfolding. If my story stayed with you, let it mean something. Support this space by subscribing and sharing your voice in the comments. Tell us where you're listening from, so these stories can reach others who may still be searching for strength. Your presence, your engagement, and your support help bring light to stories that deserve to be heard. Stay connected. More powerful journeys are coming next.